contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. She pinching your own cheek? Because I was looking down and did not know we were getting...
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma will do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Happy Monday. Normally it's a football Monday to start off with everything that happened over the weekend, and naturally we will do that. Vinnie Iyer will join us, and we'll go over the latest in the National Football League, including a thriller on Sunday Night Football and a thriller between the Rams and Bills. We'll go over that game a little bit more extensively. In addition, Adam Caplan, our SportsGrid insider, will be with us, and we'll go over the latest in the National Football League as well, and also talk a little bit more about some of the options that are left here in the college football playoffs. Some teams are in, some teams are out. The latest on that as well. But hey, it's baseball season, sort of, right? We had the big signing actually happen late last night. It will become official over the next couple of days. Juan Soto, the most coveted free agent since last year, Shohei Ohtani, is set to sign the richest contract in the history of Major League Baseball, approximately $750 million, as he is headed to the New York Mets. So Soto spends that season with the Yankees, takes them to the World Series, and then essentially decides to go for what looks like to be a decision between the Yankees and the Mets, at least according to what has been published. Now, it still remains to be seen as far as what the Mets will do elsewhere and how the Yankees will pivot from this. Right now, the Major League Baseball winter meetings are going on in Dallas. So naturally, we'll get more information over the next couple of days, how this ends up shaking out. And, obviously very surprising to see this amount of money given to two Major League Baseball players in back-to-back seasons, one in Shohei Ohtani and the other is Juan Soto. All right, college football playoff is now set. The big story coming out of the weekend was that fantastic ACC championship between Clemson and SMU, which essentially, with Clemson winning in the last second of the game, knocked Alabama out of the 12-team playoff. So we are headed now toward what could be the most exciting playoff we've seen in years. We go from 4 to 12, as you can see. The number 1 seed is Oregon, followed by Georgia at number 2 after winning the SEC championship. And a lot of projections have those two teams facing off in the final. But we know better. Stranger things have happened in college football. And so a long time to go before we get there. December 20th is the first round of the college football playoff, and bowl season is upon us as well. All right, Chargers, Chiefs. I mean, do we even need a script at this point? You know how this is going to go. The Chiefs are going to win in like the last minute of the game, and that's what ended up happening. A field goal going through off a doink. AFC West is now the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty dull game, all things considered. 19-17 the final. as Kansas City wins yet another AFC championship. And really the story for the Chiefs all season long have been these last-second wins. It seems like it just comes down to the end. The Chiefs make a play, and they somehow capture a very short victory. You don't want to bet the Chiefs against the spread. They're not having a good year there, especially as favorites. Let's hear from Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Reid having confidence in his kicker.
Yeah, so I mean, I've trust in Matthew, so I was good with where we were. Percentages are pretty high. I know we've won a game in that same situation on the opposite end, so I get it. But he's a solid kicker, so I wasn't too worried about it. Once we got down in there, now to get down in there was a nice job by our guys. To that play that Pat and Kelsey made right there at the end was something. So that's not quite the way it was drawn up. Yeah, it was a naked, so with the back on a slide, and they zoned it off, and Pat had it in his hands, which is important, and on the move, which is important. He does some good things with that.
Yeah, I think just got to be able to hit some of these explosive plays. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Once you do that, it opens up everything else, and it seems like we stall out on drives and little things, and I've said that kind of all year long, but it is close. I truly believe we are closer than we were this year at this point, and it's just about finding a way to prove it on the football field on Sundays. We'll play every day of the week, it seems like, the next few days, but on game days, and then we can kind of go into the playoffs with some momentum.
Right now, the Chiefs have that momentum. They just keep on winning. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Rams season continues. They beat the Buffalo Bills 44-42 and now have a shot to make it through the NFC West division title. The Bills are 3.5-point favorites. Total was 49.5, and of course, this one flew over the total. 44-42 the final. Record days for a couple of different players. The first was Puka Nacua, who had over 170 receiving yards and rushed for a touchdown. He was phenomenal. Josh Allen, though, was the only player in NFL history to rush for 3 touchdowns and throw for 3 touchdowns in the same game. And if you are playing fantasy football, 50 fantasy points for Josh Allen yesterday. If you had him, you won. If you played against him, you probably lost. Sean McVay somehow got a win, though, despite all of those touchdowns from Josh Allen, thanks to his high-powered offense.
Okay, guys, great win by our team. Really proud of these guys. They just did a good job of continuing to, make plays. I thought Matthew had great command offensively. I thought we were able to run the football. Our offensive line did an excellent job. For us to be able to maintain possession the way that we did. And our defense got enough stops. Obviously, the punt block for a touchdown was huge. It was a great job by Chase Blackburn. Jake Hummel gets the block. Hunter Long picks it up for his first career touchdown. But a lot of different things that took place throughout the course of that game. But that's an excellent team. I mean, you see Josh Allen is an alien. Some of the stuff that he can do and the things that he can create, we knew he was capable of that. He's shown that. It's why he is, as well respected and regarded in this league as he is. It's all deserved and earned. But our guys found a way to just make enough plays to be able to come out on top. I'm really proud of this group. And whether you look at it as fortunately or unfortunately, we got to be able to move on. Guys are getting recovered right now. We've got a great opportunity against the Niners. We know what a great opponent they are, and we got to be ready to roll on Thursday night against them.
Yeah, big game coming up for the Rams, of course. Probably a must-win game against the Niners because San Francisco also won. We'll get to them here in just a minute. Let's start again with the NFC West, or continue, I guess that's the best way to say it. Seattle stays on top of the division, heavily favored now to come out of the West with a division championship. They throttle Arizona by a final of 30-18. Cleveland went up early on Pittsburgh with Jameis Winston and company. That didn't last. The Steelers won 27-14 the final. Buccaneers, by the way, 6.5-point favorites. They beat the Raiders 28-13 as Tampa has now won 3 games in a row. We'll hear from Baker Mayfield coming up later. Boy, close game between the Eagles and Carolina Panthers. In fact, the Panthers had a chance to win this in the end. Xavier Legette dropped a pass that would have given them the win. Eagles were 13.5-point favorites, 22-16 the final. My pick of the year in the Bears, that went up in flames. San Francisco crushes them 38-13. Kirk Cousins, no touchdowns, more interceptions, and their defense is giving up points for free. Feels like a gift. 42-21, Minnesota beat Atlanta yesterday. I was at the Dolphins and Jets game yesterday. The game went to overtime. Very exciting. 32-26 the final. Dolphins were 6 or 5.5 in some spots. Giants had a 35-yard game-tying field goal block. They lost to the Saints, but they covered 14-11. Jacksonville goes on the road and beats Tennessee. And tonight, Monday Night Football, we've got Cincinnati taking on Dallas, if you dare watch, total 49.5. Meanwhile, Alabama Crimson Tide going and pulling out all the stops. Their athletic director basically saying they're going to have to look at how they schedule non-conference games in the future after being let out of the college football playoff. He said it'll be evaluated. Alabama will play against Michigan in their upcoming bowl game. Purdue has hired Barry Odom to try and turn around their program. Kyle Whittingham has decided he's going back to Utah for his 21st season. And what is old is new again. Scott Frost, who led the UCF Knights to an undefeated season a couple of years ago, is now back on a 5-year deal with UCF after having a tough time at the University of Nebraska. Other signings in Major League Baseball, it's the Dodgers. Who else? Michael Conforto signs a 1-year, $17 million contract. He will play the outfield in case Teoscar Hernandez leaves via free agency. Blake Trinan, the Dodgers, sign a 2-year, $22 million contract. Willie Adames signs a record-breaking contract for the Giants, 7 years, $182 million, as he will play the infield in San Francisco. And Tyler O'Neill is staying in the American League East. He goes from Boston to Baltimore, 3 years, $49.5 million. In the NBA, the MVP favorite is Nikola Jokic for good reason. Another huge game for him yesterday. 48 points for the Joker as they beat Atlanta. The Lakers, without LeBron James, get a win over the Blazers. Golden State gets back on track. 30 from Steph. Warriors beat the Wolves. And tonight, one game in the NBA, the Knicks will take on the Toronto Raptors, with New York being 6-point favorites in that matchup. Vinnie Iyer of Sporting News breaks down the NFL with us next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to, of course, what I would say is going to be an exciting day here at SportsGrid, because we're breaking down the National Football League and some of the most exciting games of the season. Vinnie Iyer is with us here on NewsWire. Vinnie, what's going on? Great to have you back here. Some exciting finishes yesterday. 2-point finish between the Chargers and Chiefs. 2-point finish between the Bills and the Rams. I was at the Dolphins game against the Jets yesterday. That game went to overtime. It seems to me, Vinnie, I don't know about you, but there is less separation this time of the year in the NFL that we have ever seen. We're here in December with teams that are out of it, and they're looking like they should be in it.
Yeah, I think this is where you have that intersection of these teams that are figuring themselves out, these younger teams that are getting better, and they're posing a threat and playing spoiler to those better teams. And there are a lot of teams still alive in the playoff hunt. I mean, the AFC has kind of put a lot of teams out of it right now. There's basically the 7 playoff teams right now, and 3 more with the Colts and Dolphins and Bengals. Bengals barely alive. If they lose one more time, they're out. So when you look at it, these other teams are playing for something. There's something on the line for everyone. It's a fun time of the year, December. Everyone's playing for jobs. There's no guarantees in the NFL going forward. So coaches, players, they're going to all give their best here down the stretch to figure out what's going to go on for next year, even if the playoffs are not around the corner for them. And you're going to have some unpredictable results like we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And Vinny, I think let's start with the funny part of the NFL, which is people think that the games by the Chiefs are scripted. You would think that they are, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're not, but you would think that they are based on the way that these have happened. Vinny, they can't cover a spread, basically. They beat the Chargers yesterday, 19-17. How did they win this one? Of course, a kicker makes a field goal, goes off the goalpost. Okay, great. They win the division, 19-17. Vinny, history tells us in sports that it's very rare to have a team sleepwalk through a season and then just turn it on for the playoffs. Is that what's going to happen for the Chiefs here? Because every time we hear, oh, they don't care about the regular season, they just want to get to the playoffs and just win. That doesn't work all the time. Is that going to work for the Chiefs?
Well, I think you look at the Chiefs, they're very much like the Patriots. The Patriots won a lot of close games during their dynasty. They were really good at doing that. All their Super Bowls were rather close for the most part, and they had to come back in some of them as well. The Chiefs have experienced that, right? I mean, they've had big deficits they've had to overcome in a couple Super Bowls they won, and it was just a thing that the Chiefs have learned how to do here. And look, you can look at Matthew Wright and getting lucky on that last field goal, but they had to find a guy to replace Harrison Butker, and he comes in, kicks 4 field goals in a pretty important game here to win the division. So they're finding some right personnel, guys that are going to help them in the right situations. They know how to close out these games. Now, I don't know if they're necessarily sleepwalking. I think everyone's giving them their best shot. I mean, as you win one championship, everyone's gunning for you. When you won 3 and 2 in a row, everyone's going to give you their best game. The Chargers are a tough team. That was not going to be easy. We knew that it was going to be coming down to a field goal probably in this one. So they're doing their best. But, I mean, do you look at that as being a fault, or do you look at the Bills maybe overlooking a Rams team they probably should beat rather easily? So you kind of weigh those two things. But we know the Chiefs' history says they're going to come through the playoffs.
Rare to have an MVP basically take home the award in a loss, Vinny, and I think Josh Allen did that yesterday. Like, right? Like, that's it. Like, 3 touchdowns passing, 3 touchdowns throwing. Rams were amazing on offense yesterday, which makes me think they're a little bit dangerous. 44-42 the final. I know there was some controversy at the end of this game. Perhaps they should have thrown the ball and given themselves a chance with 3 timeouts. I'm still not sure the Bills even win that game. But that's what Sean McDermott basically said, that they thought no matter what, they were going to have to onside kick it after, which is why they ended up running Josh Allen up the middle. But we'll just move ahead to this and talk about your opinion of both teams. Vinny, the Bills finally had that little letdown, and I would imagine it's all systems go the rest of the season. But let's focus on the Rams here. Did they show enough for you yesterday that makes you think they'll wake up now for the rest of the season? Because, Vinny, I could go back the last 6 weeks and show you 3 or 4 halves where they don't even score. So what happened last night?
What you're seeing is the Rams are in transition. They have a lot of youth around some of those guys that we're familiar with. I mean, Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp are it, but Puka Nacua, these young guys on defense, they're learning again how to win. It's like Sean McVay starting all over again. He didn't have that chance necessarily because he got a team that had Jared Goff, and he was trying to fix him and do some things that were going wrong in St. Louis. But now this is kind of his team. He's got Stafford as kind of the glue. So they're trying to learn how to win. They've got a lot of youth, and that inexperience can cost them a lot of games. But when it all comes together, like it did in the game against the Bills, things are great. And we include special teams in that. So I think when you look at the Rams, it's looking at really great here because they get the 49ers. They're banged up, short week. Thursday at home, and you get the Seahawks playing the Packers. So all of a sudden, this NFC West race could flip in the Rams' favor.
All right, Browns Steelers. Let's break this down real quick. Jameis Winston has proven that he's still a backup, Vinny, in the NFL. Probably gets a good deal, I would say, as a backup for someone next year. Steelers, I mean, Mike Tomlin is making his case to be coach of the year. They don't just win, Vinny. They dominate. I mean, this was surprising. I mean, they've scored a lot of points on offense the last few weeks.
Yeah, we'll get a lot about the Steelers here in the next couple of weeks. They play the Eagles and Chiefs back-to-back, so we'll know exactly how good this team can be. Are they a threat to win the AFC all of a sudden with their defense playing this well, with Russell Wilson playing this well? So a lot of things to look forward to with Pittsburgh. But the next 2 weeks will tell us how good this team is. And if they were able to take care of the Eagles at home, go to Christmas, and spoil the Chiefs holiday, then we're going to legitimately talk a lot more about the Steelers as being a real threat to win it all.
All right, game that's meaningless tonight, except for people like me in the fantasy football playoffs that need 17 points from the Cowboys quarterback and Jamar Chase. That's what I need. I think I'll get it. Bengals -5.5 at Dallas. I've always said the best bet in football is always that Monday night dog here. Yeah. And, Dallas is getting 5.5, totals 49.5. I know Cincinnati can't stop anybody, but I'm not impressed with Dallas. Any opinion on this one?
Yeah, I would lean a little bit towards Cincinnati, but I could see Dallas coming out and fire. You never know which Dallas team is going to show up. I think Cincinnati is going to be a little bit more fired tonight.
All right, Vinny. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, coming up next, the Chicago Bears had a new head coach this week, interim style. Didn't go particularly well. We'll hear what Thomas Brown had to say about their performance against the 49ers next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look what does it mean for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's time to dive into the latest in the NFL. Joe Madden is going to have a preview of tonight's Monday Night Football game and a whole lot more. Before we get to the sound off, some breaking news in college football. The quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs, Carson Beck, has a UCL injury to his right arm. Boy, the Georgia Bulldogs need him to start a quarterback, and they may not have him for their playoff game. We will see. Update, of course, on that coming up later today, 3 o'clock Eastern on Scott Farrell Coast to Coast. All right, now time for the Sports Grid at Sound Off. All right, let's get it rolling here and talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Put themselves right back into the playoff mix. Atlanta keeps losing. Tampa Bay keeps winning. And they've won 3 straight games. Baker Mayfield once again at it again with another big game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Baker talks about being back in the playoff mix and playing very well against a team that they have a lot of familiarity with.
Yeah, obviously we were talking about starting fast, and our guys did that. Everybody was on the same page, executing. They just hit a lull there. Obviously, having an interception on a screen is not ideal. Guy made a good play, but got to try and get it over him or dirt the ball. You just got to avoid those, given the defense a short field to have to deal with. And and then they caught us in zero pressure, and just got to hold on to the football when it came to the fumble. And then the last one, wasn't able to get all of what I wanted on that seam throw to Cade. Would have had to been a real tight back shoulder. So all in all, probably would have been a better check down to look back at it and see if Rashad was open or not. I bet he was. Just taking care of the ball. So I think by far I was probably the worst player on offense, but our guys stepped up when we needed to, and they executed.
You talk about closing the game out with 2 touchdowns to really, put it away.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take wins. It's hard in this league, and the way our guys executed late in the game to be able to really just, put the dagger home is Mike's big 3rd down conversion, leaping over a guy, doing that, and then obviously we finished that with a touchdown, and then coming back and Liam calling a play action shot when they, run cover 0 again, Cade making a great play, and then obviously J-Mac on a screen. So guys executed in critical moments, and that's what football in December is all about.
I think right now the Buccaneers are one of those teams to watch as the playoffs get ready to begin next month. All right, now the playoffs are nowhere close for the Chicago Bears. In fact, I was the one here on the show last week saying, hey, every time a coach gets fired in the NFL, the players come out, they really believe in themselves. They want to show it wasn't them, it was the coach, right? Not so much against the Bears. They were down 21-0 in this game against the San Francisco 49ers. So Thomas Brown is the interim head coach. And after the game, he and quarterback Caleb Williams made no excuses. It was just a beatdown.
And I'll start with what I kind of addressed with the team. We got our butts kicked. There's no other way to say it. We always be straightforward, honest, and open about things that transpired. We're going to do a better job of putting a better game plan on both sides of the ball so we can execute better and obviously continue to challenge our guys to be at their best. Also encourage those guys and also demand that we still stay unified. It's a grown man's business. There is no lay down or quitting our football team, which I do love. We're going to do a better job of trying to find ways to start the games faster, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. I think we'll do a decent job at halftime of making adjustments, but get the ball rolling at the beginning of some games to be able to build with the lead. But overall, I mean, not enough explosive on the offensive side of the ball and gave up way too many on defense.
Yeah, we got, we got, I don't know if Thomas said it like this, but we got our ass kicked today. And there's no way around it. You can, like you said, they had, I think at one point they had going to half, they had 240 something, I believe. And we had 4 total yards. So that's regardless of how we feel, regardless of, all of that, we got it handed to us.
I think right now the Bears is looking forward to next year. I'm looking forward to tonight. Here's a preview of Monday Night Football with Joe Madden.
We definitely could be in for a high-scoring matchup here on Monday Night Football if the Dallas Cowboys are able to put up their share of the points in this matchup. Now, they're a 5.5-point home dog and have won their last 2, but don't be tricked into this team. This team hasn't had success on both sides of the ball all season. They're coming off their first home win, and that was versus the Giants on Thanksgiving. They won the game prior versus the Washington Commanders. The Bengals have been so strong on the offensive side of the ball. It's their defense that has been letting them down. Joe Burrow has a 30-5 touchdown to interception ratio coming into this game, and I'm expecting him to be able to get that ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins out there on the field. I'm going to take the Bengals team total over 27.5. Look for them to be able to put up their points in this matchup. Back to you, Craig.
All right. Thanks very much, Joe. We'll take a quick time out. We'll be joined by Pat Evans of Legal Sports Report up next here on NewsWire. Don't go away.
she was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Great to be back with Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. We'll dive into the latest in the state of Texas. Could we get sports betting there anytime soon? We'll find out. Pat, great to have you back here on NewsWire once again. And I don't have a watch on here, but time, I was going to point to my watch, which I don't have. Time is ticking here in Missouri. They got legalized sports betting. You know, this idea that sports betting would come to Missouri after the legalization in November, you know, some talk, oh, maybe we can get this going in December. Well, that's not going to happen. I don't think January is going to happen either. So what's the update here?
Yeah. So, Craig, I promise there will be a time we don't have to talk about Missouri. But, I mean, it feels like we've been talking about it since we started doing this almost 3 years ago, and they've been trying to legalize it. And I think we're coming to the end. As you know, as you just mentioned, it did pass during the election last month by a very, very slim margin. So there's been thoughts that there would be a recount, and that maybe it doesn't pass, actually. But thankfully for the industry, it has been certified and has officially been passed at the ballot. So this is a long journey. You and I have been talking about it for 3 years. First, when it was a Missouri-Kansas race, and Kansas got it done and launched in 2022. And it was the whole border war, and we thought, oh, geez, there's no way Missouri's going to let them launch it without them launching it. But sure enough, here we are almost 3 years later. Actually, 3 years later. Nope, it's 2024. Geez, jumping ahead of myself there, Craig. But almost 3 years later, and still nothing. Now, to your point, once it was passed in November, a lot of people were very excited. Oh, man, we can get it off the ground right away. Of course, that's not how it works. The regulatory agencies still have a lot of work to do to kind of get the licensing in order, the applications ready. The thought right now is, as we're hearing, is the Missouri Gaming Commission will get emergency application rules out in January, so the applications can be submitted and get that ball rolling. And it sounds like they want to get off the ground by late spring, early summer. Of course, that's not a great time to launch because there's not a whole lot going on for sports books. But hey, it's better than having to wait until 2026.
Yeah, no, we got to get it going soon here because we're going to get into the next state that I know next year you and I are going to be talking about this, just like Missouri, every week. It's sports betting in Texas. And I find it really interesting here, Pat, that a lot of people cannot bet in Texas, but they sure are trying, according to your article over at Legal Sports Report.
Yeah, they're really trying. GeoComply recently released some new numbers. What is it? It's 1.48 million users in November attempted to place a bet in a legal sports book in a different state, probably Louisiana, would be my guess for most of them. And of course, GeoComply blocks that because they're doing their job. But that was an 87% increase from the last year. So, I mean, obviously the momentum is kind of growing. People are hearing sports betting. Oh, people are talking about sports betting in Texas. Maybe we can do it. Of course, then they go and try, and then they can't, and then they probably get upset. Does this mean a whole lot for the chances next year? Unlikely, as we've talked about ad nauseum, and will continue to do so. Because just like Missouri is the latest state to launch or to be ready to launch, which we haven't had in a while, and the industry really wants it. Well, Texas is potentially the largest potential handle in the U.S., and they really want to get their feet in there. However, of course, in 2023, we had a bill to legalize sports betting that was passed by the House. So great. That's great. But the Senate, it didn't even get a vote. And that is because Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, super anti-gambling expansion. Same thing is going to happen this year. They only meet in the legislature every other year, every odd year. So 2025 is the next one. And Dan Patrick will still be in his position, still playing roadblock. So 2025 is unlikely, but that doesn't mean this momentum, the people trying to bet, the legislators who do want to keep building, the industry continues to pour resources in. You know, I know we talked last week, I think, about Miriam Adelson this year pouring $13 million into political action committees to try to get more people on board. And I think this is all just continuing the momentum build. Eventually, more and more legislators will see my constituents want this. We need to do it. I mean, it's an insane amount of people in Texas that I can imagine want it, and an insane amount of money between the Adelsons and Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban and everyone. So, yeah, it's just something that I think we're going to have to wait till at least 2027 to actually have really positive news for the industry. But I think we're going to see a lot of like little inches forward in 2025.
All right, let's close it out with another state that would love to have sports betting, and they actually have a border. Like, for example, Jacksonville is so close to Georgia, people can just drive over the border, make their bets in Florida, then go back and live in Georgia. We saw that with New York and New Jersey for a long time. I know that's happening. How about legalizing Georgia? Any shot of that coming next year?
I think Georgia is one of the two likely states to actually get it done in 2025, along with Minnesota. And I think, you know, again, just like Missouri, you and I have been talking about both of these states since we started doing this. I mean, Georgia's been very close a couple of times. Minnesota's been very close a couple of times. And I think heading into 2025, Georgia is saying, all right, we need to get this done. I mean, there's enough of support. It's a bipartisan support. Last year in the Senate, both parties came together. We're like, this is a great bill. Let's do it. However, there's a couple people in there who want a constitutional amendment, which then makes people fall off because they're like, that's a much harder lift. But anyway, one of the sponsors, Brandon Beach, he wrote an op-ed in the Atlanta Constitutional Journal saying, you know what, the swing voters who changed the state from Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024 want sports betting. And that means, I guess he assumes, most voters want it as well. And he singled out Latino voters, young male Latino voters, who are apparently generally more apt to be sports bettors as well, as they shifted a giant margin from Biden to Trump in 2024. So just a kind of an interesting anecdote from him in this op-ed, calling for his legislators to get it done and take away the black market and push it into the light and see what happens there. So again, Georgia, you and I, between Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, I think you're going to be sick of me coming on here, whether it's you, I don't know, maybe you like talking to me still, or the listeners, you know, they might get sick of me, but you know what? We got to do the news.
Yeah, you know, the other thing, Pat, before we close out just this conversation is, and I know we don't talk about it that often, but it seems like Florida has created this model for California to follow. I mean, I don't know if that's the way it's going to end up going, but I have a feeling when it does, that could be another topic for us.
No, I think it definitely will be, and I think we'll start hearing more and more about that soon. I think the tribes are really kind of coming together and trying to think or build on what Florida did, and I think you're right. I think that's something that California particularly will be looking as an option. And yeah, just like Texas, actually probably more so than Texas, the industry wants in. So they're going to be willing to play ball to figure out how to get in there. And that is through the tribes, realistically.
Understood. All right, Pat, great to catch up with you once again. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for coming on NewsWire.
Thanks as always, Craig.
All right, Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. We had some really big games yesterday in college basketball. In case you missed it, the number one team in the country has lost again. How about this? Kansas loses this time to Missouri, who we just spent so much time talking about. 76-67, the final. Mark Mitchell scored 17 points in the game. Also, number 25, UConn goes on the road to Austin. They beat the Texas Longhorns 76-65. UCLA hands Oregon its first loss of the season on a game-winning 3, and Creighton, off to such a nice start in college basketball, has lost one of their better players. Pop Isaacs is going to have hip surgery and going to miss the remainder of the season. He was averaging 16 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 3.9 assists through 8 games. By the way, if you want to download the SportsGrid app, just take out your phone and scan this QR code. It's available right now. It's free on iOS and Android with the latest news, notes, information, picks against the spread, and some really cool new golf updates for the upcoming golf season, which starts next month. The SportsGrid app available right now. Just scan that QR code. We'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire. When we return next, we will be joined by Adam Caplan, our SportsGrid NFL insider. We'll go over the latest in the National Football League right after this.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Let's recap the National Football League as we head toward the playoffs, getting closer and closer, teams clinching. That would include the Kansas City Chiefs, who clinched their 9th straight division title. Adam Caplan is with us for the latest there. And Adam, as I spoke earlier on the show with my guest, Vinnie Iyer, it does feel like, I know they make fun, it does feel like some sort of script for the Chiefs this year. Every game is wild. At the end, you don't know how they're going to do it, but they end up doing it. If you bet on them, you're losing money all season long. I just don't know what to make of this team this year. Maybe you can sleepwalk through the regular season and win a Super Bowl, but I'm going to bet against that this year, Adam.
Yeah, look, they've been lucky. I mean, last night, the Matt Wright filling in for Butker as a kicker. He gets lucky. He hits the left upright. It doinks in, okay? He makes the kick. They're up 13-0. That game last night is the epitome of the Chiefs, right? I know where you're going. They're kind of underachieving. They should be better than they are in terms of a look. I know the record's great, but they should look better. So if you look at the score at half, they're up 13-0. The Chargers could do nothing right, okay? Herbert's got less than 80 yards passing, but they should have been up by way more. And that allowed the Chargers to come back. They made it 13-7. They would wind up taking the lead briefly by 1 point, and then the Chiefs got the field goal at the end. But that's been the story of their season. They're no longer a dominant team. They're very good defensively. And this just goes to show you now they've had some good luck, and then they have some bad luck. DJ Humphries, their new left tackle, he has a hamstring injury late in the fourth quarter. He is their third starting left tackle this season. That's something to watch going forward for the Chiefs.
All right, Falcons and Vikings yesterday. The Vikings, put up a dominant performance offensively and defense against the Falcons. I feel like it's a bye week when you're playing against that Falcons defense. The Vikings scored 42 points. And if you watch the game the week before, you would have said their offense is horrible. All of a sudden, they come alive here. And I know Sam Darnold was fantastic. We'll get to him in a minute. The Falcons have just completely gone south here, Adam, both on offense and defense. And Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's had stretches like this over the course of his career, but I don't know how much longer Atlanta can wait this out.
Well, typically, Craig, when you talk about go to Michael Penix, of course, their surprise first-round pick, to go to him, you got to feel like, A, he's ready. And from what I'm told behind the scenes, he's done a good job. He's improved. But you kind of got to feel like, you know what? We've gone the course of Kirk Cousins. We're done. Because next year, the money's guaranteed. This is not a Derek Carr contract or Daniel Jones contract. They're trying to protect yourselves. $27.5 million next season is fully guaranteed. That's not the issue with Kirk Cousins. You're talking about it's this mini regression right now. He's not playing good football. Turning the ball over, not seeing it well. This actually reminds me, it's funny you bring this up. Several years ago, we were talking 5 or 6 years ago with the Vikings. He would have these interceptions where you're like, what were you thinking? Ironically, the guy on the other side for the Vikings, he was that guy for the Jets or Panthers. And we're talking about Sam Darnold. It's just, it's interesting how that's happened. But I don't know if the Falcons are there yet. They keep talking him up. Raheem Morris, their head coach, he kind of shot down any rumors about potential replacement, but it's not looking good. But I want to get to their defense. Their defense has had no pass rush all season. The NFL's by numbers, the NFL's worst pass rush. And you wouldn't think that with Raheem Morris. It just tells you from a personnel standpoint, they're nearly not good enough. And that's something in the offseason will have to change.
Yeah, if the Falcons fall out of it week 16 or whatever it is, maybe 17, 18, they turn to Penix just to, give Falcons fans something for next year. It's possible.
Why not?
So Sam, there's not 30 good quarterbacks in the NFL. So Sam Darnold's going to be a starter either on Minnesota or somewhere else next year. He's got 29 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I find it so funny. Jameis Winston has like one good game a couple of weeks ago with some insane mistakes. And now after this past week, everyone's like, oh, I guess he is just a backup. But Darnold will be a very coveted 1 year or 2 year placeholder for someone, I think, next year, maybe even a prolonged starter with the money in the NFL. What would he be looking at next year?
All right. So, Craig, if you polled 32 teams and you had confidential conversations, I would be willing to bet they would tell you there would be 6 teams that in conversations would tell you that they don't know who their quarterback is next season. Well, if you fast forward, we'll talk more about this on NewsWire and SportsGrid going forward, but if you talk to personnel people around the National Football League, there are really only 2 first-round quarterbacks. Cam Ward of Miami, who's fantastic, and Shedeur Sanders, of course, of Colorado. That's it. So Milroe, to me, is going to be a second-round pick. He needs to improve his passer, but he could run, but you got to be able to throw the ball effectively at the next level. You hit on it. There are just not enough good quarterbacks. So here's what the Vikings have to look at. J.J. McCarthy, I know he missed the entire season. He played one preseason game. He played excellent football against the Raiders, and when he suffered the torn meniscus. They have to make a decision. Do they want to delay it? We've seen some teams do this. Do they want to delay it, or they want to just hand it to McCarthy? Because he's the future quarterback. That's not in question. The
Right.
question is, do they want to go forward here with Sam Darnold, resign him? He's a free agent. Do they want to bring him back? And that's not something they're talking about right now, but they will in the offseason, because when you're so far ahead of schedule, right? There's a thinking around veteran players and personnel people. Do we want to take a step back with the young quarterback, or stay the course with this guy who's been the ultimate reclamation project here? Incredible. And look, you mentioned Jameis Winston. This is a guy that could use a guy like Kevin O'Connell. Okay, Kevin O'Connell is like the all-time quarterback whisperer. What he's done with Sam Darnold, no one thought, Craig, could happen.
No, I mean, and funny, both guys' reclamation projects starting with formerly with the Jets, Sam Darnold and Geno Smith actually have good years too. All right, Panthers and Eagles. The Eagles escape with a win. I don't think it's all that concerning. You're going to go through these stretches. The Eagles have been dominant, Adam, for the last month or so, and they just had a little bit of a setback last week. They still win, maybe a little bit lucky, but, just like the Bills, this is going to happen.
I do want to point out two things, though. The kicker, Jake Elliott, is struggling. He is now 0 for 5 and kicks over 50 yards. We're talking about field goals. Nick Sirianni, clearly, the head coach, clearly passed up a 54-yarder because he knew that Elliott's struggling. And then Jalen Hurts is not pulling the trigger. Speaking of another former quarterback for the Jets, Mark Sanchez, talked about that when he was doing the game for Fox yesterday. Hurts is not pulling the trigger on throws he's got to make, and that is concerning going forward. But yes, they've won 9 in a row.
Any pick on Monday night tonight?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I both teams are really bad. Yeah, probably Dallas. They're a little bit better.
All right, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got the biggest signing in the history of Major League Baseball to discuss. Also a couple of quarterbacks chopping it up, talking about going in the NFL draft, and also a very peculiar name from one of the youngest runners in history. I'll get to that in just a second. It's time now for some last licks. All right, we'll start off with the biggest story of the day. We'll end with the biggest story of the day. That's for sure. Juan Soto signs with the New York Mets. Wow, goes across town. Apparently had a lot of opportunity to stay with the Yankees and just didn't want to do it. And so this tops the mark set by Shohei Ohtani last year. A lot of people thought that that wouldn't be the case because a lot of Ohtani's money was deferred. But nope, Juan Soto is going to play with the Mets next season and the foreseeable future. Just goes to show you that having the deepest pockets seems to be the winner here. And speaking of deep pockets, Juan Soto is going to have those. Here's what it amounts to. Over the course of this contract, $51 million per year. There's no salary cap in Major League Baseball, keep in mind. $4 million, $250,000 per month, $980,000 per week. Folks, he's making $139,000 per day. This is crazy. $5,821 per hour. And folks, he's making $97 a minute to play for the New York Mets. I got mixed emotions on this stuff here. I want the players to get as much money as possible here, but the haves and the have-nots in baseball just keep getting deeper. You're going to have teams that are just so far ahead of everybody else, and the Mets are definitely going to be one of those teams. And then you have teams at the bottom, that basically, are not even spending any money. Soto played for a couple of different franchises, including the Nationals and the Padres, who are not the biggest market teams in the country, but still did spend. And now he's going to be with the Mets. And by the way, has an opt-out after 10 years in this contract as well. All right, let's get, a lot of people wanted Colorado to play against Miami in a bowl game because you're going to have two of the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft going at it. And it sure seemed like Shedeur Sanders wanted to go against Cam Ward. That is the story here. Both Sanders and Ward are going to play in their respective bowl games. You don't generally see this that often, but Cam Ward on a FaceTime call, how about this? That was posted somehow on social media. Cam Ward on a FaceTime call with Shedeur Sanders was basically told by Sanders that Ward is lucky that he is not playing against Shedeur Sanders in the bowl, or else Colorado would have won. Now, Miami ended up playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and so that's where they are headed. As far as Colorado is concerned, they're not going to be playing against them. They'll be playing in the Alamo Bowl. Needless to say, both of these quarterbacks will be taken in the first round. And I do think, by the way, it is great that we're actually going to see some relevance in the bowl games coming up in December and January. All right, finally, look, I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, and I've watched the video. If I'm getting it wrong, I am sorry. But this gentleman's name, this young man who is 16 years old, his name is Gout, G-O-U-T, G-O-U-T. This is his name. He ran the fourth fastest under 18 100-meter ever in Australia. This kid is the fastest in the world, and he is just 16 years old. And let's just keep it real. He's got a name that you're never going to forget. That's G-O-U-T, G-O-U-T, 16 years old, and giving Usain Bolt a run for his money here. Bolt was the fastest for, about a decade in terms of the Olympiads and everywhere else, but maybe he's got a new contender, and we'll never forget his name, Gout. That is his name, 16 years old, fourth fastest ever, and he's just 16. It's crazy. All right, that'll do it for the show today. Thanks, everybody who's watching. Thanks again to Adam Caplan, of course. In addition, thanks to Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report and also Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News. Got a great schedule up ahead. May not be a great game on Monday Night Football. I keep it real here. It may not be great, but it'll be great for sports betting. And for those of you who have fantasy implications, it'll be great for you too. Tune in 3 o'clock Eastern. Scott Farrell, Coast to Coast. He's ready to go this afternoon. That's followed by Game Time Decisions, Pro Football Today, In-Game Live, Pro Football Game Day. And then tonight, wrap it all up with Pro Football Today post-game. That's our remaining schedule for the day. Thanks to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. See you back here tomorrow for a recap of Monday Night Football and some college basketball results as well. Thanks so much for watching. And don't forget, you can catch NewsWire every single day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. See you tomorrow.